10月22日火曜日、現在は21時、26分、回るところになります。本日はアメリカの雇用統計発表の日ということで、今からですね、22時ちょうどまで、録画していきたいと思います。本来であれば、10月の4日に発表される分だったんですけども、ご存知の通りですね、アメリカの債務引き上げ上限の問題がこじれにこじれ、2週間近くですか、3週間近くですかね、アメリカの政府機関の一部が閉鎖された影響でですね、今日まで、発表が延期されてた分になりますね。今回も、事前予想が出てまして、非農業部門雇用者数が、事前予想がプラスの18万人で、失業率が 7.3% というふうに、出てますね。ちなみに参考情報として、10月の第1週に発表された ADP 全国雇用者数の方なんですけども、あちらも事前予想は18万だったんですけども、プラスの16万ちょっとぐらいしかなくて、ちょっと予想に届いてなかった数字で ADP の方が終わってますので、ちょっとそれも含めてですね、どうなるのかなっていうのが、ちょっと本日は注目されるかなという部分になるかと思います。
Well, I am back with Dimensional Fund Advisor, Chairman and Co-CEO David Booth. We're also joined by Diane Swank, the Chief Economist at Mezro Financial. She's also an advisor to the Federal Reserve.
一応直近の流れとしては、ドル円で、そうですね、98円の、32銭台で今推移してますかね。でユーロドルが 1.36 の73あたりで推移してますね。ちょっと今回はイレギュラーな感じになってますので、ちょっとこれからどういう風に動くかなっていうのはちょっと予想するのは少し難しい状況なのかなという気がしてます。あと今日この後雇用統計が発表されてもですね、また11月になればすぐ雇用統計11月発表分、今度10月のですねが発表されますので、今回の数字はちょっともう遅いというのもありますし、今日もしこう動き推移であればですね、11月に入ってから発表される数字の方が注目されるかなというふうな感じで見てますね。もう少々で、発表の時間を迎えますので、ちょっとこのまま発表の瞬間を待ちたいと思います。
The hope is that it does go to 7.4% because I'd like to see some more participation rate out there. We've really seen much of the decline in the unemployment rate in recent months due to fewer people throwing their hat in the ring and actually looking for a job. And what we don't want to see is exactly what Mike pointed out is what was the economy like before the government shutdown? How much of a shock absorber do we have going into this? And not only the number itself, but the quality of the jobs, the composition of growth is what we're really going to be looking for. I'd like to see some manufacturing and construction jobs. Don't know I'm going to get them.
Okay, so Diane, just hang on because we're just a few seconds away from that number. Also, Mike, hang on as well. But just to tell our viewers what to expect in this report, 180,000 jobs expected to have been created. The jobless rate at 7.3%. Peter is at the Labor Department. Peter?
148,000 jobs in September. The unemployment rate ticks down to 7.2%. There are modest revisions to the prior months, adding
結果出ましたね。プラスの非農業部門雇用者数がプラスの14万8000で、失業率が 7.3% ですね。失業率は予想と変わらず 7.3% なんですけども、 非農業部門雇用者数の数がちょっと予想数値に届いてない状況ですね。予想がプラスの18万だったので、プラスの14万8000で、結果出てきてますね。それを受けてですね、ちょっとドルが下がってる感じですかね。あとユーロドルが上昇してますね。ドル売りの流れにまたなってきてるのかなという感じですね。ユーロドルに関しても 1.37、もう中盤まで行こうとしてますので、ちょっとこのまま、上昇続くとなるとですね、ドル円に関しては、下の方に圧力かかってくるかなという感じかと思います。
But that is not going to be true of the numbers to come over the next few months.
The subsequent ones as well. That's absolutely true, Peter. Just stay with me for a moment. I want to get to Alex, who's got more on the market reaction. I saw equity futures tick up a little bit after these numbers.
Yeah, they did. It seems like overall among all the asset classes, it's really about the Fed will taper later rather than sooner based on these numbers. Now, you see here the S&P just up 3 points, not that exciting, but if you take a look at the chart, you do see this huge spike higher ever since 8 o'clock, especially then on the numbers continuing higher there. No end in sight then for the stimulus. It's a similar story here in the Treasury market as well. You see the yields continuing to lower about 2.5% now. So if the Fed keeps buying, the yield's going to go lower. And in the currency market, you can see this reflected in the dollar all throughout the morning. You saw a stronger dollar, and that quickly reversed, especially when it comes to the pound and the euro. Now you see the euro rising against the dollar here again. You see this spike after the number came out. And finally, if you needed any more conviction here, all you had to do was look at the gold market. If you have more money in the system, there's worries about potential future inflation. That means investors sometimes buy gold, an alternative asset to that, and you see again that spike up $17. Betty?
Alex, thank you so much. Alex Steele on the market reaction. Mike, Diane, David, stay with me on your analysis of the jobs number. David, let me start with you. I mean, you normally don't really trade or invest on economic data, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, these numbers are, over the short term, it's hard to figure out exactly what they do mean.
Right. Well, but over the long term, you can.
Over the long term, the long-term implications. Obviously, you want to have more employment rather than less. And one of the staggering things about the recovery is the government's done so much to try to stimulate the economy.
Well, the Fed has done so much,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But we haven't really budged that much.
Well, I know it calls into question, are they really pushing on a string, or are they really accomplishing something?
Which I'm sure, Diane, is a big source of debate within the Fed.
Well, it is a source of debate within the Fed, the efficacy, how effective is their balance sheet. I think, the hard part about this is the counterfactual, and that is that the financial crisis was worse than the Great Depression, and we're not in a depression. So as bad as it is, and as depressing as this economy and recovery have been, it's still not a Great Depression, and I think you have to thank the Fed for that. There is, though, a lot of questions about what does it mean with their balance sheet. That debate has sort of taken a back seat, and now we know why. One of the reasons was the labor market had not improved enough by the September meeting, and this confirms two things the Fed said they were delaying tapering for. One was the labor market had not healed enough, and the second one was they were worried about the risk of fiscal missteps, which clearly we had with the government shutdown. So I think one of the things I take away is good news, teachers being hired back, but you strip out 22,000 government workers. This is an abysmal number on private sector employment growth. This is not what the Fed is looking for.
Okay, Mike, you agree?
I think Diane came up with a very good word for it, abysmal in private sector. And you look at the revisions, it does tell you the economy had no strength really going forward. July revised down to just 89,000 jobs. We did get a bump in August, but then we come back down again in September. So no momentum at all. If the Fed had these numbers, they wouldn't have had any justification for starting tapering. Not only that, but the incomes numbers were weak, just 0.1% rise. So you don't see any strength at all in the labor market. No pickup going forward. About the only thing you can say is that we did have the normal seasonal thing of teachers being hired, and that pumped up the numbers, and the number of people who left their job voluntarily increased. Those are about the only good things I can find in this report, although you have to say the numbers, the household employment numbers, a little bit better than the establishment numbers, and that's one reason the unemployment rate went down. That is marginally good news.
David,
it's about as marginal as we can get, Mike. Sorry.
No worries on that. But I was just asking David about this idea that this economy is not really, as Mike just said, it's not picking up steam. It's sort of flagging along. We're not getting that huge jobs creation. How does that affect where you invest? How does it affect the kind of companies that you invest in?
Well, we're investors for the long haul. The question is how do markets react to all of this, and how much of it was known or forecast in advance. And the market seems to have baked a lot of this really into the prices already. So.
But what's baked in for you? Baked in for you is sluggish growth. Interest rates are going to rise eventually. I mean, is that what you're baked in?
I'll go back to these three Nobel economists that are getting the prize in December, and none of them believe you can do much forecasting over as short a period as 3 to 5 years. So when you get into months or weeks, then we don't spend much time adjusting at all.
Focusing on that.
Yeah.
Diane, what about the Fed, though? What do you think the Fed's going to do here?
Well, the Fed is on the sidelines. They're going to have to delay further. I also think that you're going to start to see the Fed focusing more on its forward guidance. One of the things that's backed up for the Fed that they're not exactly happy about is that people think that the Fed may raise short-term rates now sooner than they did in the past, and that came as a residual of the tapering talk. They've been talking about this 6.5% as a threshold to begin raising short-term rates, and that not being a hard target, that not being a trigger. And I think it's very important they're going to start pushing that out a little further, that we're going to need more of an improvement in unemployment beyond the participation rate actually has to rise. We cannot have it just sort of staying steady here, and I think that's very important for the Federal Reserve. So the Fed is going to start what they call forward guidance, trying to anchor rates a little bit more with basically saying we're going to leave that punch bowl out till a few people get tipsy.
Right, that participation rate staying at 63%. And Mike, just quickly, do you believe that we're going to see Fed policy pushed out to under Janet Yellen?
Well, you'd have to say that's the base case at this point, because certainly they can't do anything in October given these numbers. And in December, we're only going to have the November numbers, which are going to be a reversal of what will be abysmal, to use Diane's words, October numbers that'll reflect the shutdown. So they won't have a clean read on data for quite a while. And if they are making the criteria for tapering strength in the labor market or a strengthening labor market, they haven't got it and won't have it probably until March.
All right, Mike, thank you so much. Economics editor Mike McKee, Diane Swang, chief economist at Mesirow Financial, and thank you to David Booth, the chairman and co-CEO of Dimensional Fund Advisors, and Peter Cook, who has been standing by at the Labor Department, broke those numbers for us. And we are just about 30 minutes away from a very rare and special interview with Warren Buffett. As you know, he built an investing empire, then gave away half that fortune. He is in the loop today with his son and grandson to talk about the legacy of philanthropy. And Audi had hoped Ducati would rev up its profits, but that plan stalled. We're going to tell you what the motorcycle company is doing to kickstart its sales and rev that engine back up again. Stay in the loop.
To sing anytime, anywhere. Especially when you put a smile on someone's face. I'm Nadia, and I'm a flight attendant with Cathay Pacific.
雇用統計発表から10分、経過して現在21時40分を回るところになります。レートの方ですが、ユーロドルが 1.37 の34、ドル円が97円の97銭、ユーロ円が134円の57銭、同時ドルが 0.97 の01で今推移しております。 結果の方がですね、9月のアメリカ、非農業部門雇用者数がプラス14万、8000で、失業率が 7.3% ということで、事前予想がですね、プラスの18万と、失業率が 7.3% だったので、失業率は予想通りだったんですけども、非農業部門雇用者数の数がですね、ちょっと予想には届かなかったような状況になってまして、一応初動の反応としては、ドル売りですかね、ユーロドル上昇してドル円が売られるという形で、釣られて、オージードルも一緒に上がっているような状況ですかね。ちょっとユーロドルを詳しく見たいんですけども、ユーロドルちょっと週足で見ますけども、これも、そうですね、今の水準がほぼほぼ、年初来高値更新しているような状況ですので、ちょっと勢いつけると、ここからまたもう一段ぐらい、上昇するかなっていう感じですかね。日足で見て、レジスタンスの1と週足の、これフィボナッチピボットなんですけども、レジスタンスの1とレジスタンスの2の間が薄いですからね、ここも抜けてくるとなると、レジスタンスの2も抜けてくるとなるとですね、ちょっともう一段、上昇するかなという感じですかね。今ちょうど、年初来高値を抜いてきているような状況ですね。あともう一つ、詳しく見ておきたいのが、オージードルですね。こちらも、日足ですけども、先ほど 0.97 もつけるような場面がありましたけども、これもちょっと週足で見るとですね、0.88 ぐらいのところからずっと戻ってきてるような感じなんですけども、結構いいところまで戻ってきてるんですよね。0.97 も先ほどつけたということなので、ちょうどここら辺の節目になってるっぽいところまでは戻ってきてますので、とりあえず 0.97 つけた後にですね、ここからまたもう一度上げるのか、それとももう一度ここから、戻り売りを再開するのかっていうのを、ちょっと注目したい部分ですね。このまま、ユーロドルにするような動きになるのであれば、一緒になって上がっていくかなというような気もしますけども、ちょっとそうですね、ドルストの、上昇が目立っているような、状況になっているかなと思います。
The yield comes in. This is his financial repression. It affects retirees more than anyone else. And Bill Gross just stating you make the coupon on income. So dividend growth looks better and better, and you see futures up in the equity market as the yields come down.
Okay, so when are we going to get out of this financial repression, or is this a state of play for the time being?
It's a raging debate. You see someone like Neil Dutta earlier this morning on Bloomberg Surveillance, optimistic like Chairman Bernanke that we're moving in the right direction. Others are far less positive. David Malpass looking at the effect of Washington on the U.S. economy and the idea that it's really dampening economic growth. What I know for certain that you and I can agree on is that investment creates jobs, and the number one thing to really begin to get that job spirit going is where is the investment by big corporations?
Right, where is it? Does that have to do with tax policy? Does it have to do with clearing?
Well, it's one thing to ask Warren Buffett. I think that would be a great question for Mr. Buffett. He owns a lot of those big companies. You look at his Heinz transaction, this idea of where will the big companies be, or out in Omaha. Is it 4 generations of Buffett on today?
3 generations.
Just 3. Okay, 3 generations. But the idea...
There could be 4 eventually.
Can I be a great-grandson? That's all I want to be, is a great-grandson.
Are you willing to live in Omaha?
I'll move to Omaha.
Tom in Omaha?
So it'll be a break exclusive. Anyways, it won't be Snowball, it'll be Snowflake. But when you look at this, and you look at Warren Buffett and Heinz and Burlington, all these big companies, it's also about small business.
Yes.
And they're just not in this mix.
You know, one thing that Buffett has gotten slightly wrong is his early call on housing. He said housing was going to lead this economy out. And yes, we've seen this rebound in housing, but it hasn't led the economy out. It hasn't created the jobs because we see the evidence of it.
But we see it, but then there's been this pause. In Mr. Buffett's defense, and I'm one of his biggest critics about he's out there trying to be an economist, the lights are very bright on Warren Buffett, and he has a real pressure, almost like a politician, to come up with big pronouncements that are optimistic by definition. So I'm going to cut him major slack on the idea of making a housing.
Why? Because if he came out and said the apocalypse is coming, we'd all sell off. And,
he can't be John Malden or David Rosenberg. He just can't do that.
Or Noah Ravini.
I'll move to Omaha. Just please.
I want to see you there. Tom, great to have you. Thank you. Tom Keene of Bloomberg Surveillance. Still ahead, Coach, struggling to keep up with the competition. We're going to tell you what the company is doing to try and turn itself around. And don't touch that vacuum cleaner. Let the robot do it. I would gladly let that robot do it. We're going to look at the business behind iRobot. That is next.
To sing anytime, anywhere. Especially when you put a smile on someone's face. I'm Nadia, and I'm a flight attendant with Cathay Pacific.
Opportunities aren't always obvious. Sometimes they just drop in. CME Group can help you navigate risks and capture opportunities. We enable you to reach global markets and drive forward with broader possibilities. CME Group, how the world advances.
Well, Boston tech breakout iRobot took more than a decade to develop its first mass market product, the floor cleaning robot called the Roomba. You know it, just right there. Since then, the company has exploded, filing over 200 patents in the United States alone. Here's everything you need to know about how it is driving growth in your living room.
雇用統計発表から20分、経過しまして、現在21時50分を回るところになります。 少し、ドル円が戻ってきましたかね。先ほどまで98円割れ、97円台の後半で推移してたんですけども、現在また98円台戻って15銭まで戻してきてますね。それと対照的にちょっと、ドルストレート、ユーロドル、あとオージードルですかね。ちょっと、最高値から少し、崩れてきた感じではあるんですけども、ただ、全体的な流れとしてはまだ、ドル売りの流れ継続かなという感じですね。肝心の雇用統計の結果の方ですけども、先ほどから、ずっとお伝えしています通り、非農業部門雇用者数がですね、プラスの14万8000、失業率が 7.2% ということで、すみません、7.3% ということで、失業率は予想通りだったんですけども、非農業部門雇用者数が、ちょっと事前予想に届かないで、数字で終わってますね。ちょっとそれを受けてですね、為替の方はドル売りで推移しているような状況になってまして、特にドル円とかがちょっと97円台また後半あたりまで突っ込むような場面もあったりしてですね、ちょっとこの後、ニューヨークダウとか始まる時間帯になりますけども、ちょっとドル円はそうですね、97円台突っ込むような場面がもう一回あるとちょっと怖いかなというような、気がしております。あと逆にそうですね、これも先ほどからお話ししてますけども、ユーロドルは年初来高値の水準捉えてますし、あとオージードルとかも結構いいところまで戻ってきたと思いますので、そこの動向が少し気になるかなという感じですね。
Well, German auto giant Audi bet big on its Ducati, but it's still waiting for a significant return on its billion-dollar investment. Matt Miller has more.
Last year, German luxury car maker Audi bought Italian superbike brand Ducati for over $1 billion. Everyone immediately asked, why? But not long after that, Ducati's North American division posted record sales in 2012, even though its competitors continued to slump. 2013 hasn't gone so well. Globally, deliveries are down almost 5%, and Audi surely wants to rev up the revenue. Ducati is famous for the souped-up speed demons ridden by Hollywood stuntmen. Remember the chase scene in Matrix Reloaded? Or or Tron Legacy, where the Ducati Sport 1000 steals the show?
Might be dangerous. Think he can keep up?
In Wall Street, money never sleeps. Shia LaBeouf races his boss on an ultra-rare Desmos Sedici on the back roads of Bear Mountain. Ducati's problem? They can't sell enough of those $70,000 superbikes in high volume. And the core of their business is still the naked, air-cooled V-twin monster models that go for closer to 10 grand. The Monster line is responsible for over a quarter of Ducati's total sales now, but that's down from half of the company's deliveries a decade ago. So to revitalize sales of the bread and butter Monster, the bike is being reintroduced with a liquid-cooled lump and a metal tank reminiscent of the higher-priced superbikes. Audi is hoping the improvements will boost sales around the globe, with their bottom-line bike raising their top-line figures.
I love looking at them. They're beautiful. When are we going to see this monster?
We are not going to see the new Monster until November at the International Motorcycle Show in Italy, but Ducati is releasing 4 new models. They really want to drive sales, obviously, for Audi, although they've done pretty well already.
And you own a few.
I do. I own a Monster. I have a Multistrada coming on. I've actually had 2 Monsters. It's such an iconic bike, and it's been such a great seller for Ducati for a good reason.
Very cool. All right, thank you, Matt Miller. And it is 56 minutes after the hour. Bloomberg Television is on the markets. Futures are pretty much unchanged from where they were before the jobs numbers came out, a little bit lower than expected. We'll be back with more in a moment. Stay in the loop.
I love to sing anytime, anywhere. Especially when you put a smile on someone's face. I'm Nadia, and I'm a flight attendant with Cathay Pacific.
雇用統計発表からですね、28分、経過しまして、現在レートがですね、ユーロドルが 1.3725、ドル円が98円の17銭、ユーロ円が130円の75銭、オージードルが 0.96 の92で、推移しております。雇用統計の結果ですけども、非農業部門雇用者数がプラス14万8000人、失業率が 7.3% ということで、失業率は事前予想通りだったんですけども、非農業部門雇用者数が事前予想がプラス18万人だったので、ちょっと、事前予想の増加分までには、届いてないような、結果に、雇用統計の方は、終わっております。それを受けて初動の動きはドル利の流れが優勢だったんですけども、ピークの時に比べればですね、ドル円もちょっと戻ってきてますし、ユーロドルの上昇も少し、少し削られてきてるかなという感じですね。この後、ニューヨークダウとかも始まってくる時間帯になりますので、ロンドンフィックス以降にかけてですね、どういう動きになっていくのかっていうのが、注目されるかなと思っております。